the IT Security One-to-One Summit podcast series. Listen to industry insiders discuss the most critical issues in IT security. Featured on this episode, Demetrios Lazarikos, better known as Laz, from vArmor.com, talks to Jim Manico of Manico.com. You are listening to the IT Security One-to-One Summit podcast series.
Hi, this is Laz from vArmor, and today I have the privilege and opportunity to speak with Jim Manico. I affectionately refer to Jim as the father of application security. He's been doing this for a very long time, and with the advent of applications, circa 2000-ish, and the commercialization of the internet, one of the areas I think that InfoSec practitioners are struggling with is where to build application security, exit criteria, and where InfoSec actually fits within application security. So I wanted to take some time and talk to Jim a little bit about his input. He is a practitioner. He also is a teacher of application security, and I think having him here to talk about three areas that I've outlined are going to be pretty exciting. Jim, welcome.
Well, Laz, thank you for that kind introduction. And first of all, Laz, I'm a big fan of you. I'm glad to be here with you, and I hope you're doing well.
Well, thank you. So, Jim, I think one of the things that people wanted to understand a little bit as we prep for this discussion was, do you think application security should be viewed as and treated as a separate discipline from traditional InfoSec, or do you think that application security should be integrated into an overall InfoSec program?
Well, I think the real answer is not or, it's both. And so I think that, number one, for traditional security teams are already trying to rein AppSec into their current activities. That's not a bad idea, especially when it comes to like incident handling and monitoring. You really need some traditional security professionals to assist in those activities. But if you stop there, you're going to lose. This is also a software engineering problem when you talk about application security. If you're talking about software engineering, you're talking about developers and the developer organization. And very often, as we both know, the developer organizations and the security organizations at big companies are very often miles apart, separated by big oceans. So I think the answer to that really is both. We need both extensive activities in how we write software to achieve secure software, as well as integration with multiple traditional security activities.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think the hardest thing for us as InfoSec practitioners is that from my experience, what I've seen is a lot of InfoSec practitioners come up through the ranks of system or networks. Not many come up through application security. And I'm wondering, do you have any coaching or guidance that you'd give to a director of InfoSec or a CISO that's just stepping into this role so they can better prepare for application security?
From a couple angles, let me approach it first from a standard point of view. I think it's really important to understand the details of application security, even at the CISO level. This is a gap I see in most CISOs where they're trying to affect positive change in the world of their applications and application security, but they're not very knowledgeable about the minutia and details of what secure software looks like. And so what I recommend for CISOs is go read the Application Security Verification Standard 3.0. This is an OWASP standard defining the characteristics of what secure software should look like, broken up into different security categories, as well as what things they should be testing for when using a variety of pen test and tool services to, audit an application. So are your people auditing that properly? Are they doing thorough analysis? Give me a standard to look at those things. And I think the ASVS standard from OWASP, especially version 3.0 about to come out, really helps a CISO understand the minutia of what practitioners need to deal with when accomplishing application security excellence.
That's a great point. I think this segues into the next topic, which is how do information security practitioners handle the best way of looking at an app and resolving it? So, for example, when you look at pen testing and then remediation, or pen testing and patching, or using a WAF, what do you think's working out there? What do you think's not working? And what recommendations would you have for somebody there?
That's a really big and almost loaded question.
Well, it is. If you want to break it down, why don't we take it down into pen testing and patching, or pen testing and remediation? If we start there,
that's a good place to start. And this is where most folks in information security start when they're thinking about application security. They're thinking, how many vulnerabilities are live, and how can I test that series of applications in a rigorous basis? And that's where a lot of people start. In my world, that's usually the last thing I deal with, though, because I'm focused on the other end of the software development lifecycle. I'm asking questions like, how do we build secure software in an effective manner from day one? What framework should we be choosing that will give us good security properties? How do we get developers to build secure software in their day-to-day jobs? So I tend to look at this from the other angle, and I bring that up because that's an area that most security teams completely ignore. They see application security as just assessment. What tools? Should I look at the code? Should I look at the application that's live running? Is there a new category that Gartner recommends I should be looking at? Laz, that's important, and it's a skill set that information security people have. But if you start and end there, you will fail.
What I hear you saying is that this has to be embedded as part of the overall SDLC process, and it has to take into account how to look at the idea from the architecture and tech design, how it's developed, and then how it's supported once that application is released into production.
Bingo, Atlas, exactly. And if you stop just by influencing developers, then the things that developers are often not good at, like handling real incidents and dealing with monitoring and being able to do the operational aspects, traditionally developers are not in that world very much. So this is why a union between both of these worlds, I think, is really fundamental. For example, you have incident response and people monitoring live applications or looking at log files, right? Now, what's being put in those log files? Is it just the developers throwing whatever they want in there? Or has there been a coordinated effort between developers and incident response teams around what to log so they now know what to look for, and there's coordination in this? And this doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's beautiful. It's excellent. And
I agree.
And it's hard, and it is hard work, Laz. It's extremely hard work. But we're engineers. How many engineers do you know of in our industry that were hired to do easy stuff? And
that's true. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Exactly.
Hey, so Jim, on this note, I mean, what do you think's working right now with application security?
Let's go back to your world now.
Yeah.
Just a nod to that. Testing. I think testing early and testing often and testing continuously is a great idea. And here's what's not working. Go buy one magic tool that some vendor told you will solve all your problems and stop there. That is a great path to ultimate failure. Here's what I see really working. Teams that are throwing everything they can at the problem. This tool, that tool, this kind of analysis, that kind of analysis, static analysis, dynamic analysis. I asked a little bit here and there. Here's a bunch of open source tools I'm throwing at it.
Don't forget the WAF.
The what? I'm sorry?
The Web Application Firewall.
Okay, let's talk about the WAF. You want to go there? Let's go there. This is a difficult topic for me to talk about, Laz, because I'm going to quote an executive friend of mine. WAFs are for wimps. Right? If your solution to application security is to slap a firewall in front of it, minimally tune it, and then walk away from it for a year, this is not even doing application security at this point. I don't want to demonize the WAF, so let's get into it. You want to go there? Let's get into it. The most people that I've seen in large companies, Fortune 500-ish companies, here's the big secret. They have WAFs, they check compliance box, but how many of those people do you know of that actually put WAF in blocking mode?
I agree with you. Out of the Fortune 500, there's probably, I'd say, less than 10% that are actually doing that. And I think the biggest challenge is like you're saying, somebody goes down the path of, I need to have a WAF to meet regulatory compliance. I'll put it in. But taking the WAF, I mean, my opinion is the WAFs are a Band-Aid, right? I mean, you still have to go back and fix the code. You still have to go back and look at, do you have a high-risk country hitting your website? Do you have a high-risk country, or do you have bad behavior hitting that web page at a high velocity or doing something malicious to try and exploit something? The WAFs are a good stopgap, but you still need to fix the code.
Now, the other side of that is there's a lot of what I think is excellent innovation in that area. This technology has not plateaued. There are a lot of interesting companies emerging up with next-generation type firewall technology. I have seen that work. It works when you dedicate full-time professionals to managing that WAF on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
As software changes.
You have to operationalize it. It's important to embed it as part of the infrastructure, but then you have to hand it off to the operations center so they understand what to do and how to report and respond when they see malicious behavior. behavior. Totally agree.
Or even a step further than that, and I agree with you. Suppose you want to keep this WAF very custom tuned, specific to your app, and it's a defensive layer that you're depending on because of legacy issues. Now, every time that developer changes the code and releases a new version of the application, you usually need to reevaluate the tuning of your WAF, especially if it's a big change. Your current WAF rules may break. You may break existing apps or no longer be protecting certain areas of the app. So the best teams I've seen who use WAFs effectively, they dedicate extensive resources to managing it, and they're coordinated with the developer teams. So as developers shift code, the WAFs are shifting with that application deployment as well. I see a well-managed WAF as an extension of the application itself, and it's not something that can usually effectively be managed by itself without working in coordination with the application teams.
Absolutely.
And how many people do you see using WAFs in that way?
Not many. I can tell you, it's less than it's a small number when you look at the Fortune. My experience, it's a small number when you look at the Fortune 500.
So I'm not dissing the web application firewall technology. I'm just concerned that especially in the past, these tools were sold as a panacea. They were sold as a silver bullet. Slap it up and go. And I want to give some credit to the major WAF vendors. In my experience, in the last couple of years, they do not sing that song anymore. They've gotten big enough where they've sold extensive product with the promise of quick fix. That didn't happen. And I think they've learned their lesson to stop doing that. So I at least feel the WAF industry is getting a bit more honest in how they talk about their product offerings.
Got it. Totally understand that. When you mentioned, looking at an environment and looking at some of the legacy things that are out there, one of the challenges I think organizations are struggling with in the building their secure application is, where do I start and stop my encrypted communication? And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at data at rest, data in motion, and data in transit, okay, how do I protect this? So, this is a topic that I've seen. I think you've seen a lot of this. You've probably seen a lot more because you're, out in the field working on this every day. But the adoption of HTTPS in an environment, both public, for public-facing internet applications as well as private applications, what are you seeing out there? What are people doing, and how are they protecting, and where are they using HTTPS?
Two of the big things that excite me in this world, let's talk about Netflix. And I have no association with Netflix. I'm just really impressed that Netflix, one of the sites that sucks up the most traffic on the net, they move their entire infrastructure in terms of forward-facing video deployment all to HTTPS. That's incredibly well configured. This is no small effort. If they can do it, anyone can do it. They're doing this on extensive streaming video throughout the entire world, and they're pulling it off incredibly well. So there's an example of a big player who shifted to HTTPS purely in a very intensive, hard-to-pull-off way, and they did it well. They can do it, everyone can do it, and frankly, everyone should do it. When should you tolerate sensitive data being sent plain text or stored plain text in your infrastructure?
Well, some people will argue with you and tell you that if it's on a private network behind a firewall inside of a corporate environment that's not exposed to a public-facing internet application, some people will tell you that they don't need to encrypt or they don't need to run on HTTPS internally. How do you feel about that?
That's effing stupid, Laz. You can quote me on that. That is incredibly dangerous. That is ignorant, and that is lacking to successfully approach one of the most basic aspects of information security. You don't trust the network. This came from Salter and Schroeder back in the 70s at MIT, who wrote all these original white papers on information security. Number one, don't trust the infrastructure you're on. You assume it's compromised. There's no such thing as a private network in this day and age. And so I have seen major companies who've gone through major breaches, frankly, who have web services on their private application network that have no authentication, no access control, and no encryption in transit, and let other applications retrieve that data for data dissemination throughout the other application inventory and infrastructure. And that private application network is all plain text for whatever reason. This is stupidity and foolishness, and there's nothing acceptable about that activity in 2015. And I hate to use such strong language, Laz, but I've run across this a number of times, And it bothers me that we're not even dealing with that basic aspect of application security, let alone the tough stuff. Because at the end of the day, HTTPS, it's hard work to do it, but it's just work and time. It's not incredibly difficult like other aspects, like getting your identity management with OAuth and SAML and all these things working together in harmony. There's tougher problems we can talk about. But HTTPS everywhere, this is fundamental to good information security. So assume attackers are on your network at all times. It's not even an advanced idea. It's a pretty basic information security idea.
Right.
And the other half of the good things I see happening, it's things like Netflix has got their act together. That was very interesting. But I also like the Let's Encrypt project coming out, which is going to allow companies to get free certificates by the Let's Encrypt Authority. This is a nonprofit-ish effort to promote more use of HTTPS for everyone.
Oh, that sounds like a great project. How would listeners find out about this project?
Just simply Google Let's Encrypt. It's a very popular project. There's a lot of big players who are supporting this. This is the EFF and other large groups are involved in this. And this is just, again, a way to get free certificates for your websites. One of the excuses not to do HTTPS in an internet-facing website is I can't afford the certificate, a couple $100, right? So this is a quick and dirty way for people to get free certificates. And what I see someone doing is, I don't want to mention their name, but they're using a certificate management infrastructure, and they're getting new certificates for all their websites on a daily basis because of this project. They're not re-signing once every 2 years.
They're re-signing daily?
Every day or every couple of days. And with the right infrastructure, you can do this. I don't want to talk about the virtues of that, but I'm just saying there are
people that are getting creative with using this solution, and what I heard you say is they're automating it through DevOps to ensure that they have encrypted everything that's stored, processed, or transmitted in their environment.
Exactly. And the only hard part about that, frankly, is going to be key management. That's the really difficult part. It's not a solved issue. That we get into things like HSMs and more advanced storing of certificates, that's the hard problem. Other pieces of it are very doable today.
All right. Well, Jim, we're out of time, unfortunately. I'd love to talk to you more about this. I'd like to thank you for making the time to talk today, and our listeners for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to me independently and find out more about this discussion, you can reach me off the varmour.com website or laz@varmour.com.
Thanks for listening to the IT Security One-to-One Summit podcast series. To listen to other podcasts or for more information on the IT Security One-to-One Summit, visit us at one2onessummits.com/ITSec. That's ONE2ONE summits.com/ITSEC.